Hello and welcome to Box, the football talk show brought to you by Sportology TV with myself, Ali Drew. On the last episode, I was joined by Adam Bateman from Bait TV, who was talking all things Man United and Man United Women's. So if you haven't already, make sure you check that out. But on this week's episode, I am joined by the host of Searching for Shinies, and that his own very own podcast. He's also a YouTuber, a football writer, and a huge Newcastle fan. Delighted to be joined by Ketch. Ketch, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks very much for the invite.
Thank you for coming on. So just talk to me about how you've sort of got into this industry. You know, as I mentioned, you've got your own podcast. You sort of do a bit of everything. I've seen you on YouTube, you do some writing. Just talk to me about how you got into that.
Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, and it all stems back to, I think, when I was about 7 or 8, I started to read football magazines religiously. I was a huge fan of Shoot magazine. My grandma used to get that for me every week, and I used to dip into Match as well. And by the time I hit high school, I realized I had quite a decent vocabulary purely through reading Shoot and Match and watching Match of the Day. Like, I knew how to use all these adjectives to describe things, like, disappointing and all the football cliches and stuff like that. And I got to the end of high school and I was really into sport, and I wanted to do PE and coaching and stuff like that and play football. I was playing football at like an amateur level, and I wanted to get into coaching, but I was much better at English. I would get good grades in English, and I was pretty average, to be honest, at PE and sports science and stuff like that. So I ended up going to university in Hertfordshire, where they did a course which was half English language and half sports coaching, and almost immediately fell out of love with the sports coaching and got really into writing for the university paper. So I would go to gigs in London and review music gigs. So I really got into music journalism first. And then I just finished my degree. I just kind of went through the motions with the sports studies side of things and decided to do a master's degree after my university degree in media and journalism back in Newcastle. And I'll be honest and say the course wasn't great. And whenever people ask me for advice, I just say to people, just get out there and get some work experience in. The best thing I did really was when I finished uni was I went into London. I did work experience at magazines, like at the time Lads Mags were big, Loaded and Front Magazine, FHM. So I would go and do work experience at places like that. And that's where I learned. I would go there for 2 weeks and learn more than I learned in 6 months on my uni course. So I always say to people, just go and write for people, go and start YouTube, build a Twitter account, build Facebook, TikTok, all of that. Academically, if I was to do it again, I probably wouldn't waste my time and money. I would probably try and get stuck in a bit more. So I kind of came to it all a bit later. And then by the time I finished my master's degree, it was 2008, and the recession had hit, and I just couldn't get a job. Couldn't get a job in journalism. I was working in a call center for 18 months. And then I got an editorial assistant gig at a local magazine in Newcastle called Living North magazine, which was like a glossy magazine that you would read about kitchens and bathrooms, and but they didn't have a men's section or a sports section, so they kind of invited me to come in and write about sport. And I would interview everyone from Joey Barton to Jeffrey Boycott to all types of sports personalities, anyone with a connection to the northeast of Yorkshire. And I was able to go out there and just write loads of features, do loads of interviews, get used to the sound of my own voice, listening to myself back on dictaphones, transcribing thousands of words. And this got to about 2014, and I thought I need to kind of get more into football. That's where I want to go. So I decided to move to London. So I was applying for all sorts of jobs in London. I was applying for jobs at magazines like Men's Fitness magazine and Shortlist magazine, which was the free magazine that was out at the time. And then I did an interview for Match of the Day magazine, which is a children's football magazine. Readers are aged between 7 and 14. And they liked my CV, but I didn't have a lot of football experience on there. And then they started process me in the stages, and I got given tests to do. And one of the tests was write a cartoon script, which I'd never done before, and pitch some ideas. And I just went for it, and I ended up getting the job, which was unbelievable. To get into with Match of the Day magazine was amazing. And all of a sudden, you have access to all these players. Like, I interviewed Harry Kane in my first year, Sergio Aguero, Gareth Southgate interview, Trent. I did an interview with Trent Alexander-Arnold in his kitchen. And you go to all these big events, boot launches. Every Wembley game, we got a ticket. So, League Cup finals, FA Cup finals, FA Cup semi-finals, England games, we were there in the press box, in the mix zone. And you were encouraged to get out there and just build relationships with Nike and Adidas and get really stuck in. And it was just an amazing, amazing role for me. And I did that for 5 years. And I was looking for something new and looking for something different. around about when COVID came, and unfortunately my role was actually made redundant due to COVID. And then an opportunity came up at Chronicle Live to work across Sunderland, Newcastle, and Middlesbrough as like a fan engagement role. So I get to do podcasts. I'm launching a new Newcastle podcast in the summer. I do their social media stuff, and I get to write articles for them. So it's really good, and it's enabled me to come back home. And I've moved to Cullercoats from London, and I live on the same street where Santiago Munez came in the film Goal. I don't know if you've ever watched that.
Yeah.
The house he moved into with Glenn Foy, I'm living on the same street as him, so I get to pretend I'm Santiago Munez from time to time.
That's an interesting journey, and obviously now you're doing your own podcast. Just talk to me about the sort of the ones that you've got going on, because you've got a 90s podcast as well.
Yeah, so that started during lockdown. So I got made redundant, and I had a bit of space and time to find out where I wanted to go. Did I want to stay in London? Did I want to come back to the Northeast? And a lot of people kept saying to me, "You should start your own podcast. You should start your own podcast." And honestly, about 2 or 3 people whose opinions I really trust said that to me. And the third guy that said it to me was my mate Richie Wyatt, who I went to uni with, and he said, "You should start a podcast." And I went, "Well, you do one with me, and maybe we'll get this off the ground." So we started thrashing some ideas around, and Richie's the same age as me. We grew up in the 90s collecting stickers, and he says he came up with the idea, but I definitely came up with the idea because we both like the 90s podcasts like Quickly Kevin and Under the Cosh. And there's a really good one Jimmy Bullard used to do called Magic Sponge, where they interview old players and get all the old stories from the 90s. And I said, I want to do something like that. And I said, we need a theme to be like collecting interviews like we collect stickers. And I said, why don't we just get our old sticker book out and go through it and see if we can interview any players from this book. So we settled on the 1997 sticker book. So get out the loft, and we said, right, let's just see how many players we can get. And we managed, so we just started, I had quite a few contacts in the design world. We got a nice website design, searching for shinies.com, go and have a look. It's very 90s themed. And we got logos done, and we built our Twitter and Instagram. We just started hounding players, and we got Steve Chettle, who used to play for Nottingham Forest. And he was our first interview. And then we asked Steve if he had any contacts, and he promised us a few and never delivered. So we just carried on via my contacts book and Twitter, and we got Lee Dixon, and we've had Craig Hignett, Neil Maddison, Neil Sullivan, Ian Hart, Steve Jones, West Ham, and then this week we've got Keith Gillespie. So I'm a Newcastle fan. To get someone who was in the original Entertainers was amazing. I remember meeting Keith in 1995. I told him, I reminded him about this on the podcast, and I posted the picture on our social media of me and Keith in outside Newcastle's training ground. So it's been amazing getting a hold of these players. They've all been unbelievably generous with their time. We've been doing 2-3 hour Zoom calls with these players, just talking through their careers and talking about the 90s. Keith Gillespie gave us 3 hours of his time last week, so that's going to be a 2-parter. So it's just been so much fun. Some of the stories we've had are just incredible, and I think the rarer players, so players who aren't as well known, give even better stories. So if we get someone who you might not necessarily have heard of, I strongly advise having a listen to that episode, because the stories are fantastic. And we've done, I think, 9 interviews now. I'm going to try and get a player from every club from 1997, and then we might do another book. I don't know, but it's been really good fun, and something that just came out of being locked down. So one of the positives from a negative there.
Yeah, something really different. That's good. I like that. It's different from your general interview, just seeing what they're doing, what they think of the football. That's a good idea. Well, we do need to talk about, as you mentioned, you're a huge Newcastle fan. So we do need to talk about Newcastle's sort of the season's coming to an end. At the moment, they're in 16th. They've survived relegation. It was looking a little bit dodgy at one point, but they've got through it. It's fine. What do you make of the season that's sort of been? We've got a couple of games to go, but what have you made of it?
Really tough, really uninspiring, difficult to watch. Not a lot of consistency there, and it's been just really hard on the fans. I think the majority of fans aren't happy. This is a club that isn't. The question I would like to ask Mike Ashley and Lee Charnley is, I'm a season ticket holder. I've had a season ticket since 2000. Why should someone come and pay and watch Newcastle at the minute? There's no real sign of progression or investment. It's doing the bare minimum to stay up. And it hasn't been fun to watch. There's been large periods of not winning. I think we've had 14 wins in the last 56 games. And the football hasn't been very inspiring. And that disappoints me mainly because I think we've got some really exciting players there. the forward line of Almiron, St. Maximin, and Wilson, why can't we be bombing on every week? Why can't we be taking games to other teams? Why do we have to give possession up and hope to catch teams on the counter attack? I just think there's a lot more potential in this team than we've seen. Yes, they're probably going to finish about 13th or probably 14th is where they're going to finish. But why can't they be up there with West Ham and pushing for Europe? That's where Newcastle fans want to be, and have a run in the cup. To the credit, they got to the quarterfinals of the League Cup and got knocked out to Brentford in really disappointing manner. So that it's been hard to watch, and the whole thing has been clouded over by the takeover. So this is a club that are just doing the bare minimum to survive until someone comes in and takes it over. And until that happens, there's going to be no major investment on the pitch, off the pitch. So we're waiting for court cases to play out. So there's an arbitration case that's being prepared where Mike Ashley is questioning the Premier League's decision that the potential new owners are Saudi Arabian or related to the Saudi Arabian government. This is all really boring stuff to be talking about and writing about as a journalist. You want to be writing about stuff that's happening on the pitch, but this is the most important thing for Newcastle at the minute is these court cases going on off the pitch. Mike Ashley's launching anti-competition court case against the Premier League. So it's all boring legal stuff. We'd rather be talking about, can we sign Joe Willock or can we get a central defender in, stuff like that. So it's been a tedious season, I think, for fans and for someone like myself who writes about this and engages with fans. And we're all hanging on and hoping that there's going to be a takeover at some point, but it probably won't happen this summer, maybe not even this year.
Do you think that Steve Bruce is going to stay? Because as the sort of manager, he's been linked to a few different clubs. But do you think that he's going to stay? Will he want to stay if there's going to be no investment for new players and the players he wants?
I think he'll definitely stay, and I think he'll definitely want to stay for a couple of reasons. He was, mid-table in the Championship with Sheffield Wednesday when Mike Ashley and Lee Charnley came and called him. He must have thought that he'd won the lottery. His career in the Premier League was over, and it was only, maybe could he get another team promoted to the Premier League? If not, he would probably start going down the division. So he would be absolutely ecstatic to be back up in the Premier League on an average. He's the lowest paid manager in the league, but huge uplift in wages and back managing his hometown club, as he says. So he'll be delighted to be here. And then I think Mike Ashley will be delighted with Bruce because his remit is to keep the team in the league, and he's done that reasonably comfortably, but by the virtue of three other teams being shocking. It looks like a team could stay up on 29 points this season, which is unbelievable. If Fulham don't pick up any more points, 29 points will be the safety mark, which is crazy. So that it's the standard of other teams really that have kept Steve Bruce in the job. He's probably not going to get any transfer kitty. I think all clubs' funds are depleted, so it's going to be loans and free transfers, I think. So that's going to be challenging for him, but he's happy to go until he's sacked. And I think there's a really high threshold of what he has to do to get sacked. If he can go on a run like he did without winning for so long and turn in a performance like he did away at Brighton, who were also struggling, and still stay in the job, then he has to lose all of his games to get sacked. And I think the hierarchy will be happy with him. And I also wonder if Mike Ashley likes the fact that the fans don't like Steve Bruce. And I think Mike Ashley might get a kick out of that because Mike Ashley doesn't really like Newcastle fans, and the feeling is mutual, I think. So I think Mike Ashley will chuckle to himself that he's got a man in charge who's done what he wanted him to do, that also kind of the fans don't like. So I think it could be a win-win for Mike Ashley. So Steve Bruce will definitely stay, and he'll definitely be happy to stay regardless of what kind of money he gets in the summer.
And I suppose it takes the pressure off Mike Ashley. The hate is going to someone else, not to him.
Yeah, great point. And Ashley's very low key anyway. He'll come to a handful of games. He seems to get excited randomly and come to a few games, or he got excited around the signing of Joe Linton a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden he's interested for a couple of months, and then his interest wanes. He's obviously a busy man, has a lot of other business interests. I think Newcastle represents about 5% of his portfolio, so he has bigger fish to fry, really. So yeah, he will like that. The Bruce deflect all the fan disgruntlement, and Lee Charnley as well. that's in their job description. Really, they have to front up. Not that they do, but they have to take the backlash of fans. It's not a very pleasant thing, but at the end of the day, they're both very handsomely paid to do that. So I guess they'll take that. It's part of their job.
Do you think that certain positions need to be improved, whether they will or not in the transfer window? Do you see some glaringly obvious areas that need improved with the team?
Yeah, I do. I think central midfield's been a bit of an issue for us, and one of the things the fans have been talking about is the persistence with John Joe Shelvey. So he's seen as a player who can do no wrong and will start every game, regardless of his form. And really, Shelvey's job is, or should be, to be the quarterback, the guy who's unlocking defenses. And normally someone will sit alongside him when everyone's fully fit. It's normally Isaac Hayden, who does the tackling, who protects the back four and gets the ball, recycles the ball for Shelvey. And Shelvey put in a lot of, I would say, below par performances. And Shelvey's addressed this as well in the press. He has a style that's seen as lazy. He can jog back and sometimes doesn't track and sometimes doesn't pick up. Doesn't like doing the defensive dirty work. He likes to get the ball off the centre back and spray passes. But I think we need a bit more from our defensive midfielder, and I want to see more goals and more assists really from someone in there. So someone with a bit more of a creative spark. I think Shelvey has a creative spark as well, by the way, but I just don't think we see it enough from him. I think there's a hell of a player there. I don't know how motivated he is. I think he's probably a bit disgruntled that his England career's over, and he is a complex character. He said it himself. He can be moody. He's not very vocal. He can be angry, pick up bookings and get sent off and stuff. So he's a complex player, Shelvey. When he's good, he's brilliant, but we don't see enough from him. And I think there should be someone in there to push him and try and get something, someone a bit more creative, someone that can link defense and attack more, because that's the issue they've had. Callum Wilson's been getting the ball in the center of the pitch with no one around him. And Callum Wilson is pressing defenses by himself. He's one of the high. If you look at his stats, he presses defenses. I think he's in the top 10 in the league for pressures on the defense. He's doing it all by himself, which is crazy. He needs players up with him. He needs St. Maximum and Almiron, and Joe Willock's been incredible for us. I think it's a huge reason why we've stayed up. Just the energy that he brings and the goal threat as well. He's scored I think 5 and 5 now, and he's only started 2 of those games at least, I think. So just someone we just need more creativity and more goals. Basically, the spine is there. The likes of Richie and Hayden and Lascelles have been there since we went down and come back up. So they know they are the spirit of the side, but there needs to be a bit of talent and creative spark around them, I think.
How important do you think it is for Newcastle to have the fans back? It's a big club in terms of supporters, Newcastle. So how important do you think it is that the fans are going to be returning for the players?
Well, I think it's important for all clubs to have their fans back, definitely. The thought of Newcastle fans coming back, it's an interesting debate, because there is a school of thought that had fans been in there, the apathy towards Steve Bruce would have been difficult for him to take and untenable.
Yeah, it would have been unmanageable.
Yeah, like honestly, the fans' anger towards Bruce and Ashley post Christmas up to about February was intense, and there was a few little protests outside the ground, large banners being unfurled by War Flags, who are a fan group, asking for Steve Bruce to leave, saying he's not one of us, asking Ashley to stop gambling with our future by keeping Steve Bruce in the job. And that was during lockdown, without fans allowed inside the ground. If they had been in, I wonder if it would be a different story. I'm going to the game on Wednesday. 10,000 fans are going to be allowed in to the Sheffield United game. It's going to be very interesting to see the reception Steve Bruce gets. Personally, I think it'll be fine. I think if the team are winning and if the team are playing well, then I think that'll take any sting out of the supporter base. But they win, they should be, by the way, because they're playing Sheffield United at home. And Newcastle have been playing well the last few games. Gave Man City a really good game on Friday, and have picked up enough wins to ensure safety. So Newcastle should be taking the game to Sheffield United and scoring goals and winning the game. If that happens, I think Steve Bruce will be fine. If Newcastle sit back and give possession to Sheffield United, who are bottom of the league, already relegated, being bottom of the league all season, then he's going to have a problem. And then they're all going to be they're all going to be sections of the crowd voicing their displeasure. And I'm really interested to be at the game to hear how that goes, and we'll be reporting on it for Chronicle Live, because it's a big talking point in the minute ahead of a huge summer.
Yes, and I guess just being back as well for you will be good, because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it's gonna be so good. And the last game I was at was in March 2020. We played West Brom away in the FA Cup, which was a great night actually. I think we took about 5,000 or 6,000 fans down and progressed in the FA Cup, which was great. And yeah, fans, Newcastle, there's famously a one city club. The mood of the city is directly related to the performance of the team on the pitch. So it really is the heartbeat of the city. It's right in the center of town. We haven't been up to town much, to be honest. So it's going to be interesting to see what the atmosphere is like around the stadium. The pubs are back open. So it's going to be good to see some familiar faces, just to get inside the ground, because it is the best ground in the world. It's it's in the center of town. It's Colosseum-like, very atmospheric, just a great place to be. And we've all missed it, and we can't wait to get back in.
Well, moving away from Newcastle just to the sort of the rest of the season, and we saw Leicester winning the FA Cup this weekend, first time ever. Do you think that was, it's a historic moment? It's the first time that they've ever managed, they've done that, but it's almost a surprise. It's been a surprising season. There's been teams that have won things, or i.e. Liverpool have not done so well. It's been a bit of a crazy season.
It has, yeah, and I love that. I love that Leicester have, because we're bored of Man City coming to Wembley and lifting trophies. And to be honest, it would have been interesting. It would have been good to see City on for the quadruple.
I had a bet on that, but it didn't come off.
Did you?
Yeah.
No, that's a great shout, to be honest. And it was a surprise to see them get knocked out of the FA Cup. But I love Leicester doing that. And I tweeted something on the final whistle. I said, I want Newcastle United to be everything that Leicester City are. Leicester City, the year Mike Ashley took over, was the year they went down into the third tier of English football. So it just shows you that if you get an owner in who comes and cares and invests and listens to people and gets a feel for the local area, there's the thing thrown at Newcastle fans that we don't like Mike Ashley because he's from the south. That Leicester's owners are from a completely different continent, but they've come in and they've embraced the area. They've spoken to the fan base. They've built a fantastic new stadium, and gestures like free beer and pies when they come in, and it just shows that if you get it, and they are a selling club. They have to sell their best players. So when people like Kante and Mahrez and Maguire excel in their careers, bigger clubs come in for them. They go, and the money is then reinvested in your James Morrisons, your Tielemans. Newcastle do that, but don't reinvest. So our players, Johan Cabaye, Jose Perez, the players that we've nurtured and built up and got big fees for, the money hasn't gone back in. We could have been Leicester. We could have won a league. We could have won the FA Cup. But our owner isn't interested in investing. He keeps the money for himself, unfortunately. But I love seeing what Leicester do, and I think it's inspiring to other clubs, especially in the last 6 weeks when we've had the European Super League stuff kick in. It just shows you that you can't take that away, because it'll stop the emotional scenes that you see at the end of a game, like the FA Cup. The FA Cup's had a lot of things thrown at it for not being special anymore. It was special watching those scenes at the full-time whistle, and I really enjoyed it. And hopefully I'll get to watch my club do something similar in my lifetime.
Yeah, because it was special to see the owner come out. The players clearly love him, and it was, and they were remembering his dad, obviously, who died in the helicopter crash, and it was just lovely to see. And based on what's happened with all the super clubs and with this European Super League that hasn't happened, but the hatred towards the owners of clubs is just growing and growing. And Leicester, that is probably the only club that could do that.
Yeah, and I think Mike Ashley should watch those scenes and hang his head. If you get your PR right and you invest, and when Mike Ashley says, "Oh, he doesn't have the money to compete with, certain clubs," that might be the case, but at least try and have a go. And if you buy a football club, really, you should know what you're getting in for. And he should have seen where it was going with the Premier League money. It was getting the figures are scary, and he should, as a businessman, should have done his due diligence and been aware of what he was signing up for. And instead, he's battening down the hatches, and he could get stung. Newcastle could go down next year before the takeover's gone through. and then he's lost all of his money. So he's a gambler, and I wish he'd gambled more and invested a bit more in Newcastle, because when he took over, Newcastle were worth more than Spurs, had a bigger stadium than Spurs, had a bigger commercial revenue than Spurs. Now Spurs are $1 billion club in a £1 billion stadium, in the Champions League, challenging for the Champions League. So it's just a huge missed opportunity. The wrong person came in at exactly the wrong time as the money was starting to go up in TV circles. But you can get back in. Leicester are probably going to qualify for the Champions League, and they've won a trophy, and I love what they're doing, and it's been a great season from that point of view.
Yeah, and it does go to show, there is hope, and West Ham have done incredibly well this season compared to last year. So that, there is hope of turning things around in a season without massive investment. It is doable. So fingers crossed for Newcastle for you that it goes next year is better. But before we finish, we ask everyone who comes on the show this question. So I'm going to ask you, who do you think is the greatest player that you've ever seen play live?
Wow. Yeah, we ask this question on our podcast. We ask the players who because the shiny sticker is the most coveted sticker. So we say to the players, who is your shiny player? And this is the best they've ever played with or against.
Yeah. We ask our former players that as well. We say, if you played alongside.
It's a great one. And it gets them they go, oh. And about 3 or 4 out of 8 have said Alan Shearer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We've had Steven Gerrard a lot for ours.
Yeah.
But Steven Gerrard.
Shearer and Cantona. So in terms of who I saw live, I have to say Shearer. I have to say, because I was 11 years old when he signed for world record fee for my hometown club. Geordie signing for Newcastle. He just set Euro 96 alight. So I've got to say Shearer. And then I got to watch him score all those goals every week. He was just prolific, and he would score all types. He would score left foot, right foot, headers, penalties, tap-ins. So it was just a joy to watch, and I just thank God every day that he came and chose us and not Man United.
Yeah, he was incredible. So it's got to be Shearer. He's still giving his opinions and doing punditry and stuff, which is I think it's brilliant to see when great players are giving their feedback on stuff. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, well, if you want someone to analyze strikers and analyze goals and finishes,
who better?
Alan Shearer is the man to do it.
Yeah, who better? Thank you so much. It's been great having you on the show, and good luck for the final remaining games, and obviously going back and finally watching a game on Wednesday. Best of luck for that one.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Great to be joined there by Ketch, and make sure you check out his podcast. It looks brilliant. But guys, stay tuned, because we have lots more lined up for the show, loads more guests who are due to coming on. So please continue to do what you can. Keep supporting us, share, leave some comments, whatever you can. We do really appreciate it, and we will see you next time.